What's going on, everybody? This topic gets brought up more often than it really should, especially now that we're in 2024. Should the Snyderverse be restored? I mean, we're sitting here, like I said, 2024. The Snyderverse essentially died in 2017. Sure, we had a successful release, the Snyder Cut movement that went on for a number of years. We got the Snyder Cut in 2021. It was an amazing time. I was part of it, and I'm sure many of you were as well. And we all celebrated and watched the Snyder Cut come out. But here's the question. Should the Snyderverse be restored, or will it, or could it be restored? And looking at the landscape of things, looking at things right now when it comes to DC, James Gunn, Peter Safran in charge, you have to sit back and look at the grander picture of everything. The Snyderverse was part of the DCEU, a DC film franchise that struggled mightily for 10 years. The grander audience wasn't accepting of that franchise, so they moved on. We've talked about that ad nauseum. But the Snyderverse, which is a little section, you can kind of say you can pull that out of the DCEU and have its own little universe, you might say. The Snyderverse could be just 2 more movies. It could be 5 more movies. It could be a plethora of other projects. But when you get down to it, it could be its own little thing. We've seen hashtags that say, sell Zack Snyder's Justice League or sell the Snyderverse. But when we get down to it, can the Snyderverse be continued? Will it be continued? What does that mean? A lot of people will say, we want the 5 films, we want 10 films, we want this, we want that. But we have to sit back and understand, what would it mean? We know James Gunn has recently talked about how Elseworld stories within DC Studios, they need to be great. They need to be something phenomenal for them to greenlight an Elseworld story, and as they should. They shouldn't just go all willy-nilly and greenlight any Elseworld story just to greenlight it. The DCU needs to be priority. It absolutely should be. They should not sit back and say, DCU will do your thing. We'll do your thing over there. No, they need to focus on the DCU. That is priority. That is their bread and butter. That is what is going to drive DC Studios into the future. Elseworld stories will pop up from time to time. Things like Joker, things like the Batman, things like that will happen from time to time, and that's going to be great. But why can't the Snyderverse continue? Well, as I said a little earlier, we have a sample size. The Snyder Cut was moderately successful on HBO Max. Absolutely. I will not take that away from them. I was a fan of it. I've watched it a few times, but the larger audience did not. But here's where things get a little tricky. You're starting a brand new universe right now. You're introducing a new Superman, a new Batman, eventually a new Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and what have you, all building up to a new Justice League. You don't want to compete with yourself. And the Snyder fans don't understand. You don't want to compete with yourselves. You don't want to have a Snyderverse of Justice League moving over here while you're establishing and building a Justice League over here. You don't want to compete with yourself. It makes no sense. That's why you don't sell the Snyderverse to Netflix, because at that point, you're competing with yourself. You're taking away box office from DCU, which is your main priority, and you're giving it to Netflix, which is a competitor. It doesn't make any sense. Sure, Netflix is going to have to pay you a pretty penny for those IPs, and that's going to give you some money, but it's still going to pull from your box office. It's still going to pull from your bottom line. You see, there are reasons why you can't continue the Snyderverse. I would love for it to continue. I absolutely would. My opinion, my idea, it's not my idea, I'm sure other people have come up with it, but the best course of action, I will say it that way. The best course of action is to animate it. Whether that's what Zack Snyder wants to do, that's to be seen. He has said things, continue in any forms of media, things like that. But animation is a smart move. That's a cheap way to go. These actors are getting old too. All right, and sure, if you just do 2 movies, absolutely, you can make it work with aging actors. Absolutely, I won't take that out of the equation. Now, if you were going to continue this on for years and years, aging actors is not a good idea. But for 2 films, sure, aging actors as old as Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill were getting, absolutely, that's fine. But animation makes sense because it's cheaper. more creative freedom and get the story that you want out there. You can do 2 films, you can do it in 3 films, you can do it in 5 films, and imagine how great it would be if that first one came out and say you just spent like $30 million on it, because it's animation, $30 to $40 million on it, and it did $100 million, $150 million. And then you do the second one. It does the same, if not more. Like, imagine that. That would be phenomenal. But there are a lot of people out there who say, that's not the way to go. It's live action or nothing. I say, look, if we can get it any way at all, why don't we go for it? As a fan of Snyder's work, specifically with the DC stuff, let's get what we can get. This isn't about James Gunn being petty or Peter Safran being petty. No, they have a universe that they have to focus on. That's their bread and butter, like I keep saying. They need to focus on that. That is what's going to keep them moving into the future. The Snyderverse, though, why not animation? Why not? But that's my thoughts. If they were to continue the Snyderverse, that's the best and most logical way for it to happen. That's what I think. Could it happen in live action at some point in time? Absolutely. But that would be 5 to 10 to 15 years from now. Maybe. That 15 years is most likely and more likely than that 5 years from now. But animation, that could be much sooner. That could be 3 years from now that it's released. Again, that all depends on how Zack feels about it. We know the cast is all about it. If Zack wants to do it, you know the cast would be behind him. And that's what's exciting. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think about all this? Do you think that the Snyderverse could be restored? Do you think it would be the best course of action to go animation as opposed to live action? What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. With all that said, hit that like button, hit subscribe, become a Slav Geek Talker. Why not? Support my channel. $2.99 a month. Get some member-only videos as well. I'd be forever grateful. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you all later.